अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सऊदी कैपिटल रियाज में 4th इंटरनेशनल इंसानी फोरम किंग सुलेमान ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड एंड रिलीफ सेंटर के ताउन से यूएन काउंटर टेररिज्म सेंटर के इश्तराक से 24 फरवरी 2025 को एक प्रोग्राम मुनक्किद किया गया। इस तकरीब में यूएनओ के मेंबर्स, इनके नुमाइंदों और ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड्स और रिलीफ सेंटर के किरदार को सराहा गया। इसमें लंदन से आए हुए यंग जर्नलिस्ट मिसबाह खान ने एक खुसूसी रिपोर्ट पेश की और यूके की नुमाइंदगी की। मुलाहिजा कीजिए इस यादगार तकरीब में रिपोर्ट। आइए देखते हैं। रक्षंदा जाहिद, पाकिस्तान एब्रॉड टीवी, लंदन।
Misbah Khan, an award-winning environmental journalist at the Bureau of Investigation Journalism, whose work in print and documentaries, we have seen her on films, has illuminated the human cost of AMR and systemic failures that perpetuate it. So please join me all in welcoming them.
The big figures, I'd done a lot of desk work, and nothing made me quite ready for what I saw on the ground. I've got two particular anecdotes which I think really humanizes the concept, because we hear big figures all the time but we don't really know what that looks like. One was when I was in Pakistan. I went to an Afghan refugee settlement. It's supposed to be a camp, but it's been there for 40 years, so we're talking about the long-term impact of humanitarian crises. There was a clinic running right in front, and it was a charitable clinic, independent, private, I think, somebody that was just doing it out of their goodwill, and doctors were working at this clinic. And so I was asking if they'd come across AMR. And then this little girl so happened to also come in, and she was 3 years old. Her name was Misbah Khan, and she had a drug-resistant version of diphtheria, which, the doctor had tried treating with multiple antibiotics and sent to private labs to get tested. And so she was managing to get treatment. I followed her home with the permission of her grandfather, and it turned out when I went to this village settlement area, not really recognized by government or anybody else. It's just running on its own. It's been there for ages, and it's kind of woven itself into Peshawar's fabric. The entire family had the same symptoms, but they could only afford treatment for only that little girl, and because the drugs weren't provided by the clinic. So they were all suffering long term with diphtheria. I'm not sure what happened to them, but there was also another 3-year-old boy, the same age, exact same symptoms. His name was Furqan. He was Muskan's cousin. So that was Pakistan in a tiny little brief time that I spent, 3 weeks. A few months later, I went to Ethiopia, and I went out to the Amhara region, which is also under the state of emergency at the time. Again, an area that's often forgotten. We went, and there were actually a massacre happened about 29 miles down the road, and we didn't know, obviously didn't plan. We flew in and out, but I got to visit a neonatal like a NICU, a neonatal ICU in the hospital, and I met Hadia, who features in one of these photographs really briefly. She's a mother. She just gave birth to twins. One of the twins had died in a hospital that had been raided 2 years earlier and was still recovering, and so they don't have the blood available to be able to treat one of the twins, and so she died. There's Hadia right now looking over at one of the babies. So she'd come to this hospital in Desi, which was like a big NICU where they had the best available care. But again, they didn't have any microbiology labs. They weren't able to test. They just had practitioners that knew a bit more about antimicrobial resistance. And Hadia's other twin had sepsis and was, fighting for her life. And so 3 days later, I left. I interviewed Hadia, came back to the desk. And I kept in touch with the doctors, and they told me the other twin had also passed away. And it wasn't really because of the fact that they couldn't treat her. It was more so they didn't have access to carbapenems, which are more expensive. And in those areas, it's more about not having access to the drugs that they actually need. So it wasn't, and again, not knowing the amount of resistance that the bacteria had. Which makes it a shot in the dark whenever they're trying to treat people. I've also heard of cases in the same ward, meropenem vials, when they are afforded, the same vial is shared amongst babies in themselves, which is also a dangerous practice, by the way, because if you share one medication between 3 of them, you have also the process of contamination between them because they don't have proper access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. But that's just glimpses of what I've captured, and I can go on for ages about this. But it's kind of humanitarian crises don't only have the problem themselves, they leave a legacy, and antimicrobial resistance is definitely one of their unfortunate stubborn legacies that don't necessarily go away, whether that be 40 years down the line in Pakistan's Afghan refugee camps, or in ongoing crises that we see with hospital raids continuously happening. And these long-drawn wars that we're seeing more and more often, I think, in this century are compounding that impact and a threat for all of us, if not only the populations that are on the ground.
Thank you, thank you. You're unbelievable, actually. You've seen it all live, and that is really what, so very brave. Thank you. Let's move